Wondering how your mindset affects your life? How to bring more energy into your business and life? Millions of people around the world ask these same questions daily. You are in the right place. Learn practices that will help give your life the meaning and success you've been searching for. Welcome to the Charge Podcast, teaching you how to create habits around real goals every day. Practical life advice from those who made it. Here's your host, Gary Wilbers.
Do you struggle with being negative? Most people struggle with being negative. Being positive takes action. Using simple positive actions will allow you to win each day. Being negative is a discharge in three key areas. Number one, your mindset to achieve your goals. Number two, your influence on self and others. And number three, your ability to learn and grow. Implementing simple positive actions into your life will allow you to win each day. Being positive takes action. So let's work to be positive. To receive a weekly video email from me on one simple positive action, subscribe to the series by going to chargepodcast.com to get the link to register today. Life is short, so why live your life by default when you can live your life by design? Make it a great day. Welcome, Chargers. We're glad to have you back this week for another great guest. I'm telling you, can you believe third quarter is here? 2022 is flying by, but the thing is, it's really about what are you getting accomplished? And remember, charges create habits around real goals every day. So some of you may have left some of those goals on the sideline. So today's guest is going to help you pick that back up because life is about being epic. And you'll know why I say that later. But today I've got Zander, and I'll explain who he is in a little bit. But first, Zander, I want you to share with us, what problem will you solve for our Charge Podcast listeners today?
Gary, thank you so much for having me here. Today, what I'm going to help everyone with is making epic choices to have that epic life that you've always dreamed of.
That is going to be an interesting conversation, so I'm looking forward to it. But what I love to ask guests is I like to let them share with us if there's three questions I should ask you that you will help answer for the Chargers. What would be those three questions I should ask you?
All right. How one small step can make a huge difference in the long term. What two magic words will dramatically boost your success? And last but not least, I am so excited to share what I call the 97-3 rule, which will help give an instantly empowering perspective for everything you're doing.
This is going to be a fun conversation, Chargers, so stay with us because today we've got Zander Sprague. He's the author of 3 books, including his newly published bestseller, Epic Begins with One Step Forward: How to Plan, Achieve, and Enjoy the Journey. Zander loves speaking to audiences around the world. Nicknamed the God of Enthusiasm because of his contagious energy and passion, he is a popular speaker, trainer, and podcast host. He is here today to help you plan, achieve, and enjoy the journey. Zander, welcome to the Charge Podcast.
All right. Thank you, Gary. So excited to be here.
Well, I love setting that up, and they know now why we want them to really be part of it. And of course, Epic is your book, but also it's about creating an epic life. And sometimes what happens is when people get in this third quarter of the year, they kind of like, I'm not achieving what I want it to. How can they take that one step to make a big difference over time into them that you shared with me was one of the first questions that you were going to answer?
Well, Gary, I think we all have epic things that we'd like to achieve in our life. But when we think about epic, right, it's huge. It's something we really want, but it seems overwhelming and perhaps undoable. But here's the thing. All you got to do today is take one step forward towards that goal. And the funny thing is, when you do that, it doesn't seem it's not nearly as difficult as you imagined it was. And all of a sudden you go, well, wait a minute, that wasn't too hard. Let me take another step towards it. So, I'll just give an example. Let's say you always wanted to run a marathon. Okay, now that's 26.2 miles is a really long way. I know because I've run 4 full marathons, 10 halves, a 50K ultra. I understand all of that. But here's the thing. In order to start that journey, all you got to do is start to run. Now, maybe it's a half mile, maybe it's a mile, but you're on your way. And then you go, well, okay, I was able to do that. Let me take a next step. What else do I need to do? And so I think whatever it is that you want to do, and here, as you said, we're in the third quarter. So, I'm not going to achieve that. No, take steps, create structure around it, and it becomes so much easier.
Yeah, I think that's the key. And so many times we get caught up in all the details instead of, I love what you say, is really it's that first step. And it can be a small step. They talk about people that when they want to go back to the gym, the first thing they ought to do is go spend, 5 minutes just walking around the gym and get in the habit of the first week that they go to the gym, because it starts the mind to set that priority that, yes, I'm going to make this a priority, that I'm going to do it each and every time.
Absolutely.
Share with us, you talked about with the marathon and with the different side of it, but let's go that a little bit deeper, because I think this will kind of help us answer that. When we talk about those 2 magic words that will dramatically boost success, are these things that can really help us? Why do they work? And, how do they work? Kind of that whole part of it, because can this help us with getting started?
Absolutely. These 2 words are, I love these 2 words. Not yet. Okay. Not yet has so much optimism around it. There's so much hope and stuff. And I think all too often we look at things as black and white. Have you gone to the gym? No. It's a hard stop, right? Have you, when I was writing my book, Zander, is your book out? Not yet. It's coming out. It just wasn't out, it's out now, but it hasn't happened yet. It's in process. When we have these epic things that we want to do, be it personal or in our business, not yet should be your passenger with you, because it helps you when it gets tough. Going back just quickly to the marathon, 26.2 miles is a long way. Some of those miles are ugly.
Yeah.
They are hard.
Just got done doing a half, and there was a few miles of even a half marathon.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. With 5K, whatever. There are parts of it that are just hard. But if you have not yet, have I finished my half? Not yet. But you're on your way. If you go, no, it just it's mentally defeating. But I think not yet opens up so many possibilities for all of us to say, I'm on my way. Now, what I like to say about epic is every pilgrimage includes commitment. And I'm not here to tell people what their epic should be, because I don't know. But for some people, it may be going to the gym, starting your business, traveling to that country you've always wanted to go to. And I think when we plan that out, there is commitment that is involved. I'm an entrepreneur. There's a lot of commitment that I have to make. And it is a pilgrimage. I'm on a pilgrimage to reach out and be able to help millions of people around the world grab that epic, step into their epic, and have an epic life. Because I can tell you personally, I'm having an epic life, and it is so much fun.
Yeah, and that's the key, is you get to share that message with others, but you want them to take it. And I'm going to get to that last question that you set me up with, but I'm curious, what made you choose to kind of really talk about that epic, and really with your audiences and your message that you want to share with them, that they make epic choices to create that epic life?
Well, it's interesting. I was on this epic journey to become a licensed professional clinical counselor. I went to graduate school. Then, because I live in California, we needed 3,000 hours of internship. I got done my internship hours in February of 2020. I was all excited. I've been telling everyone what I was going to do. And come middle of March, I couldn't do any of it. I couldn't go out and speak at conferences or at companies because everything was closed. I couldn't take the licensing exam because we were in the middle of a global pandemic. And so as I was sitting in my apartment trying to figure out what I was going to do, I had this epiphany that in my life, I've done some amazingly epic things. And each of those started with one step. All I needed to do is to take that first step and then the next step. And I'm also a really big proponent that when we're on this epic journey, create structure, because structure makes us feel comfortable, right? There's people go, oh, I don't like structure. But I guess as a mental health professional, I look at it and say, structure really helps us achieve stuff. As an entrepreneur, I have lots of stuff I have to do every day. But when I create structure and say, all right, I'm doing a podcast first thing, and then I'm going to go in and do emails, and then I'm going to make phone calls, and then my day gets so much easier because I know what I'm doing and when I'm doing it.
Yeah. And it's amazing. The thing is, I love people say they don't love structure, but what is everything's based around? There's some sort of structure. They get up at a certain time. They normally do the same order of eating breakfast or getting rest or getting ready to go. So there's structure, but it's like they're not willing to change that structure, maybe the biggest challenge.
Well, absolutely. And think about like your first 13 years of your educational process, kindergarten through high school. Okay. You had nothing but structure in your day and you weren't stressed, except for maybe the first week of when you learned what classroom you had to go to. After that, you didn't have stress on how am I getting to my second period class or my fourth period class. Maybe you're stressed about the class, but the actual how to get there was no stress. So we grow up with all of this structure. Our day isn't really difficult. We know where we need to be and when we need to be there. You drive to the store, right? There's structure there. You know how to get there. Imagine you got in your car, Gary, and you're like, I got to go to the supermarket for some milk. And you just start taking some lefts and rights. Maybe you'll make it to the store, but maybe you won't. And you're kind of stressed as you go, gosh, I really need to get to the store. Where's the store? But you haven't made any structure. So I think structure is really, really important for all of us. You know, as adults, we go, oh, I don't need structure. I don't like. No, structure is actually a really good friend of yours. It makes it so much easier, because you ran that half. You had a training schedule. Makes it really, really easy. You look at the schedule, it says, go run for 45 minutes. Okay, I can do that. You go run for 45 minutes. You'll get to training yourself up to doing that half, but you don't have to worry about how you're going to cover 13.1 miles today. You just worry about, I got to get out and go run for a half hour, 45 minutes or whatever.
I think that's the real key. And that's why I'm such a believer in goals. And what you talk about creating that epic life is because it allows us to achieve the things that we want to achieve. And we are able to set them up on our terms. So I think that's so important. And I'm kind of curious with the question here. You said you'll explain that 97-3 rule and how it can provide that instantly empowering perspective. I'm really curious to learn more about this.
Okay, I am a firm believer that 97% of our day is actually good. And up to 3% isn't so good. Now, obviously, we have those days where we just have a really bad day, and I'm not discounting that. But in general, 97% of your day is good. Up to 3% isn't good. And yet, we all seem to focus on that 3% and ignore the 97. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, why? Part of my whole internship, I was doing counseling in middle school and high schools. And a lot of my clients had part of the challenge was academics. So I asked them, I said, what's your least favorite subject? A lot of them said math. I really didn't like math. So I'm like, okay, I get it. Like, how would you feel if you got a 97 on your next test? They go, oh my God, I'd be so excited. I'd be telling my parents and my friends, I'd be so excited. And I'm like, would you be complaining about the 3 points you didn't get? Are you kidding? I got a 97, right? That sort of demonstrates the point, which is, why are we complaining about the 3% when you got it right so much? More importantly, okay, I like baseball. I'm not like super like fanatic, but I like baseball, and I think baseball is a really good thing in this example, because people who make it into the Hall of Fame have a lifetime batting average of over 300. Now, I'm not taking anything away from what it takes to have that lifetime batting average and all of that. Hats off to them. It is incredible. But basically, what if your life was a Hall of Fame life if you got it right 1/3 of the time?
Yeah.
That means if you and I are working 9 hours and we got it right for 3 hours of the day and 6 hours we got it wrong, but that was a Hall of Fame day, that really seems like you're like, okay, that's not too hard. Yeah, I can get it right 33% of the time.
Yeah, I think that becomes key, and it's how we cycle it. And then how do we change, so we don't look at always the negative, And that's what you're trying to say in this is, look at the 97%'s right. But so many people, why do you feel they hang on to that 3%?
Well, I have to say that I believe in the United States that there's this underlying puritanical belief system. Now, I grew up in New England, the Puritans and all of that. And, I got to say, in general, they weren't particularly happy people. I mean, there's sort of this, especially in New England, this underlying belief system that in order to have a good life, you have to kind of suffer. Okay. Like it has to be bad. And I can say personally, growing up in New England, like I know that's true. When my beloved Red Sox finally won the World Series in 2004, I was sitting on my couch and I was elated, but I was also horribly scared because I thought something horrible has to happen to offset this joy, this thing that I wanted. And that's just ridiculous, Gary.
Yeah.
Like that's a messed up kind of way of thinking. But I think, we're surrounded by all the things that are not right. You turn on the news, we hear about shootings and storms and, this, that, and the other thing. We don't get we're not encouraged with all of that, the positive. And in each of it, look, I woke up this morning. That was a good thing. I'm here on this podcast. That's a great thing. Later today, I get to pick up my mom and see my mom. She's flying in from Boston. That's great. There's so many things that are good. Yeah, stuff doesn't always go right, but let's keep it in perspective. If 97% of your day is really good, don't ignore it. But we somehow ignore all the stuff that went right and go, oh, I didn't get that phone call to Gary today, even though I achieved so much more.
Yeah, that is so true. And it's how we look at it, how we frame it up, how we set it up. With your book, Zander, I'm just curious because it's a bestseller. What can the readers, I know we've been talking about some of the concepts you have in there, but what do you think the readers can take away from them for them when they read your book?
Well, I mean, obviously I have many hopes of what they take away from it, but I think in general, what I've laid out is a way for you to go after your epic, to step into your epic dream. I've kind of laid out in the chapters, how to do it, plan it, achieve it, and most importantly, enjoy that journey. Look, there's all of our lives, they're little detours. Sometimes they are really fortuitous. We don't know it at the time, but all of a sudden, that path you're going on doesn't work out. There was a global pandemic and it changed kind of where I was going, but wow, what a great detour. Here I am.
Yeah. And that's the key is, man, I'm excited to read it. I have not yet, Zander, because I think the thing so many people think of is they forget to enjoy the journey.
They do. And it's like, yes, the destination is good because we need that structure of where am I going to? But even when it's hard, we should actually be saying, wow, this is really cool. Look what I get to do. Because you and I have both run endurance events, right? Yeah, they are hard. There are those miles where it really stinks. It could be the weather. It's too hot. It's too cold. You got a headwind, whatever. But I always made sure to look around, take in what was happening, revel in the fact that I was out achieving this goal that I set. And we get so focused on the end that we miss everything that's going by.
Yeah, I think that's the real key is how can we change that? The other is I love what you're talking about because epic, what you're talking about there falls right in line with the charge. Create habits around real goals every day. Because when you have those goals and you start creating those habits, which become structure, it allows you to achieve that epic side of it. and we miss out on it. I know for myself, one reason I speak in this area that I love about positive culture, that's my area. The reason I speak about it is because I realized when I got into the mobile phone business back in the 90s. Now we call it the wireless industry, of course.
Right.
And I was in that industry. But I'll be honest, I took a company that we had 2 employees to start out with to 150. And I cannot tell you, I enjoyed parts and I loved parts of it, but I didn't enjoy the journey. I wished instead that I would have taken notes, because some of the things that we did and being able to talk about positive culture now is because that's why I'm doing that, is because that's what I did in my company. But man, life goes so quick, and we all hear that. Of course, you always hear that from older people. So I'll say I'm older because I try to tell my kids now and people I see that in their 20s, man, enjoy it because it's going to go by fast.
Oh, and they have no idea. Yeah, trust me, I get that. I've got 2 daughters and they're teenagers, and I'm like, I know you have no idea, but you are going to come back in 15, 20 years and go, wow, Dad, you were right. Goes by in blink of an eye.
Yeah, that's for sure. Well, Zander, it's been a great conversation, and I'm excited. I'm going to get a copy of your book myself, but share with them how our listeners can get a copy of your book if they're interested.
Absolutely. If you go to my website, zandersprague.com, I think we'll be in the show notes, but you're just listening and you want to know, it's ZanderSprague.com. You can get a free ebook copy of my book. It's also available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, all of the sellers. If you want a paperback or a hardback copy, hopefully, I'm got the audiobook. I'm just trying to finish that up. That should be out soon if you like to listen to audiobooks. Yeah, if you go to ZanderSprague.com, you can not only get the book, but you can also find out more about me. And if I can come in and help you individually or help your company to be epic and create that epic workspace that helps everyone thrive, I'm available. I want to help you.
Okay, great. Well, I appreciate you sharing that. We will have it in show notes also. So go to chargepodcast.com if you're right now exercising or cutting the grass or doing something active, because we know people, when they're listening to podcasts, they're normally active. They're not right by that pen. So we'll have that in show notes. And my son, Chris, does a great job on show notes. But before I let you go, Zander, I always ask 2 questions to my guests that I always love to hear. The podcast is Charge. Create habits around real goals every day. What habit do you think has led to success in your life?
Creating structure. Structure is so important, and I really live it every day to say, let me create the structure that helps me to know what I need to do and when I'm doing it. And I plan out and say, how long do I think that's going to take? And I planned out my day so that it's so much easier, because I found that as much as we all say we can multitask, here's a hard fact. Our brain here is honestly, it's a single core. We're single core brain in a multi-core world here. It's a kind of a tech reference, but what I'm saying is, I've yet to meet the person who could write a book with their left hand and do math with their right hand. Okay, can't happen. So as much as we all have to do stuff, structure will help us. And I think that's that habit that really helps every day for me to be epic and step into my epic life.
That's a great one. I appreciate you sharing that. Now, this next one is, we've all had failures. And of course, we would love to have a do-over. So if you had that opportunity for that do-over, what would it be for you, Zander?
I guess I would, I've been thinking about that. I'm like, God, what would I do over? And it's kind of hard because I look back and say, well, I got to where I am because of all of the jobs and all the experiences. And if I didn't have one of those, would I be here? Right? It's kind of one of those things. But I guess what I would say is, I knew graduating from college that I really wanted to do mental health counseling. And yet I took a 22-year detour through the corporate world, had a really great time, got to do really fascinating things for many companies. But I guess maybe I would go back to graduate school earlier, so I just had more time to really lean into the passion I have of helping people. And, I seem to have a knack for talking to people and going, oh, I could see a pattern. Do you see that pattern? So that's what I would change.
Well, great. I appreciate you sharing that. And I appreciate you taking that step forward to making that change, because some of us would have stayed in the corporate world the whole time. And see, he made that change because he wanted to create that epic life. Make sure you check Zander's book out. It's Epic Begins with One Step Forward, How to Plan, Achieve, and Enjoy the Journey. And he told you can get a free download of that at his website, zandersprague.com. We'll have that in show notes, so please check that out. Zander, I thank you so much for joining us here today on the Charge Podcast.
Thanks so much, Gary.
Well, it's great having Zander, and it's great to talk about an epic life, because you all know I love talking about positive culture. But the thing is when we get done with a podcast like this, it's always like, what do I do? Now, I'm going to give you an action item. The action item is I want you to write down, look back if you have to, or you probably know in your mind right now that there's a goal or there's something that you wanted to achieve. Write that down. And I mean, really write it down. And then from there, I want you to tell yourself, what is the first step I need to start on that? So if you want to use the example of the marathon or the half marathon, if it's exercise, if it's whatever it is that you want to do, maybe you want to write a book. Write down that first action that you have to do to be able to get started on that. There's still time, folks. I know people say, oh gosh, half of the year's already over because we're in third quarter. You still have time to achieve that. Maybe you won't achieve it by the end of the year, but maybe you're started, and maybe the goal you do is set up the date today and you say from 12 months from now, I want to be able to achieve that goal. I want that for you because I know what a difference it makes, because that allows you charge in your life. It gets you excited. You heard the conversation that Zander and I have about an epic life. So I hope that helps you, and I'm looking forward to you continuing to join us on the podcast. This is one of those podcasts, you know somebody else that needs it, hit those 3 little dots on your app and share this with 3 of your friends. I would truly appreciate it. Come back next week and we'll have another great guest. Make it a great day.
This podcast is ended, but your life doesn't just stop. To continue your inspiring journey, head over to chargepodcast.com and access all the tools and resources mentioned on today's show. If you enjoyed this episode, consider sharing with somebody who may also benefit from the advice provided. That's chargepodcast.com. Until next time, charge in business and life.